Now my pleasure to introduce to you our luncheon speaker. Jenn Orgolini is the Sustainability Director of New Belgium Brewery in Fort Collins. She recommends strategy, advises decision makers on the environmental impact of their choices, and steers project teams. She presents New Belgium's sustainability accomplishments and philosophies outside the brewery to audiences such as ours today. She actually started at New Belgium some 15 years ago when she was working on the bottling line. She was doing her master's degree at another institution in northern Colorado, the one that we would probably rather not mention. No, she was at CSU, and she became subsequently the first CFO and later COO of New Belgium. And then she followed her passion, creating the sustainability director role at the brewery, and continues to function in that role and helping the organization implement their green business model. I might add that as I was taking a look at their materials on their website, they've got some exciting things that they're doing right now in the realm of sustainability and some very lofty goals they're trying to accomplish in this regard. So I'd like to now turn it over to Ms. Jenn Orgolini.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here with the Northern Colorado audience. Here we go. I went to CSU because of Holmes Ralston. That's so cool to hear that he's here to do environmental ethics at CSU. So I'm here to talk about how we use a triple bottom line approach at the brewery, and certainly it would be great if I gave you some practical ideas that you could take back about culture or HR practices or green building design. But really what I hope to do is inspire you to ask, what ultimately is the purpose of business, or what can it be? I have a quote. I have a Dalai Lama calendar on my desk at home, and yesterday the excerpt was very apt to what I'm speaking about today, so I thought I would read it. In the present circumstances, no one can afford to assume that someone else will solve their problems. Every individual has a responsibility to help guide our global family in the right direction. Good wishes are not sufficient. We must become actively engaged. So what opportunities do we in the private sector have to create positive change? Even though we have a hometown crowd here, I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you about who we are. We were co-founded by a husband and wife, Kim Jordan and Jeff Liebisch, in 1991. We like to say that we were conceived on a bike seat during Jeff's bike trip through Belgium in the 1980s, born in a basement where Kim and Jeff first made their beer for the first 2 years of the company, and then raised in the town of Fort Collins, Colorado, where we still make all our beer today. We're the third largest craft brewery in the country, and we sell in only 21 states. We have about 325 coworkers and revenues this side of $100 million. But the reason I've been asked to speak to you today is not because we're passionate about great beer, though of course we are, but because we strive to be a role model of sustainable business practices. And we're figuring out what that means every day. One thing's for sure, to be a sustainable business role model, you need to, 1, attend to the people who create value in your company, 2, figure out how to do business in a way that does not make the planet increasingly uninhabitable, and 3, make enough profit to keep the doors open. But really, I think to be a sustainable business, those 3 aims need to become complementary. It's easy to think in terms of trade-offs, but to really gain traction, you need a business model that makes success in any area contribute to success in all 3. And so remember, New Belgium's not a green industry. We don't make a green product. But our strategy is aligned with our environmental and social goals so that we're profitable not in spite of our progressive practices, but ultimately because of them. Can you read that? You can almost maybe read that if you sit in the front. So how did we get to where we are? Before selling any beer, Jeff and Kim took a long walk in Rocky Mountain National Park to figure out what kind of business they wanted to create. So it was very intentional, and that trek was momentous in our collective history because they created our core values and beliefs, and these principles still guide us to this day. So long before they'd even heard of the term brand strategy, they knew that they wanted to brew world-class beer while minimizing their environmental impact, and they wanted to have fun doing it. So you might not be able to see that, but 3 of our core values and beliefs relate directly back to environmental stewardship, and 3 describe the kind of culture we want to create. So one final note about these. Every new hire, at the first all-staff meeting they go to after they're hired, have to stand up and answer some generic questions in front of everyone in the company. And one of those questions is, what is the most interesting thing you've learned so far? And oftentimes people say, you guys actually use your core values and beliefs, and that the company that I used to work at, no one ever cared about them. And so people find this rather astonishing. And it just goes to show that writing them is not enough. Management needs to determine strategy in light of your values, and coworkers need to know it's okay to question decision-making, how decision-making might impact values in order to truly be a values-driven company. So our core values help us realize our purpose, and this is the reason that we believe we exist as a company, to make our love and talent manifest. So we've achieved our successes ultimately because of the caring and excellence of every one of our coworkers. And I think that this passion is going to be apparent in the music video I'm about to show you. So I'm kind of segueing into a little bit of a lighter note because you've all just eaten lunch. It was written and performed by our Tour de Fat coordinator and produced and edited by our PR guy, and it's acted by our coworkers. So these guys are going to say in 3 minutes, which I'll expound upon more fully for another 30. So I hope you enjoy it, and remember, I think it takes a second to load on this PC. The problem is serious, but our approach to it doesn't have to be.
When I first came to this town, there was no amber rails around. A fellow pedaled in a Belgian hood and he thought of something good. And that ride would inspire fat tire. It was really something good, and he did what he could. Well, not just booze, there's a siren in beer. It calls out to freaks, geeks and engineers, to vast contraptions, capturing steam, close the heat loop in a man-made machine. And it grew and it grew, and the workers owned it too. Oh, and that was really something good, and they did what they could. Way back in 1998, New Belgium had a little debate. Should they power the joint with coal or the wind? They gathered around and they voted it in. Hands up if you agree on it unanimously. It was really something good, and they did what they could. Brew house too, it gets mighty hot. Yoga students, they pop, drop, and they squat. The Berlin kettle, it's got a plate. Half the energy, that's all that it takes. Water use is cut in half, so there's more for your bath. Well, that's really something good, and they did what they could. From the Rockies into the bottle and what goes down the drain. Microbes feed on yeast and cows will get the grain. They put a balloon over the water treatment station, combust the methane gas and power cogeneration. Turn the waste into fuel, that's a powerful tool. Well, that's really something good, and they did what they could. Liquid Center, that's the name of the place. People come from all over just to taste. You should come on down, the beer's free to consume. Have some fun with your chums in the tasting room. Got a vibrant chair for your derriere. We're wasting the fuel, that's a powerful tool. Wind turbines on towers turn wind into power. Water use cut in half, so there's more for your bath. To skin a dipple, that'll buzz you like a triple. Hands up if you agree on it unanimously. All in like Flint, everybody voted win, and the ride would inspire fat tires. It was really something good, and they did what they could.
Yay. Thanks. Those guys are great. So you can see we like to have fun, and that our founders had a strong influence on our environmental ethic. But why might a company that didn't start with a triple bottom line approach choose to use one? You can kind of see this graph, but the reason why I give is that there are 6 billion reasons why, and counting, close to soon to be 9 billion reasons why. Michael had some great graphs, but I'm fortunate he didn't show this one. It's estimated that by 2005 we were using 1.3 times the Earth's biocapacity, meaning we needed 30% more Earth to support our population at current consumption levels, and I think that's key. So there are echoes between the financial crisis and the ecological one. It's possible, it's even a little bit fun, to live beyond your means on credit for a while, but it can't last indefinitely. And we believe that business can have a nobler and more useful role to play than just encouraging consumption. Great concentrations of intelligence and material resources occur in private enterprise. As long as we're not solely focused on profit maximization, turning a blind eye to our externalities, the strength of business can make it the structure best suited to address our social and environmental challenges. So how does New Belgium optimize outcomes for people, the planet, and profits? Through action and advocacy. Action is about walking the talk, making our operations lean and efficient, being accountable for our products throughout their entire life cycle, reducing negative impacts, and fostering innovation and nurturing a transparent, high-involvement culture. Advocacy is the ripple that our innovative and efficient operational splash can make. To be a role model, we have to talk about what we're doing and what we believe in. So we educate our consumers, collaborate with our vendors, and partner with our communities to have a bigger impact on the planet's well-being than we could on an otherwise purely transactional basis. As someone recently described it, we're fighting above our weight. Because sustainability is so often equated to environmental practices these days, I want to first talk instead about our culture. One of the innovations that Kim brings from her background as a social worker is the idea of creating a high involvement culture. So from the very beginning, we've been an open book company and an employee-owned company. Coworkers collectively own 32% of New Belgium through an ESOP program. And then we open the books and provide financial training so that everyone can understand the business of running the business. There's great data to show that high-performing companies push decision-making and accountability down throughout the organization. When you share the risks and rewards of ownership, people have a passion for what they do and love to come to work. And really, why do we work? Obviously, we need to create a living, but it's also to create meaning. And when you have work that's meaningful, people give more to it. So living up to our values and continuing to forge new ground leads to low turnover, an excellent candidate pool, and how much fun we have at work. The gift of a cruiser bike at 1 year's employment and an all-expenses-paid trip to Belgium at 5 years probably don't hurt either. Either way, there's no question that our culture is a key to our success, because ultimately, all of the sustainability practices that I'm about to show you were conceived and executed by coworkers who believe in going above and beyond their job description every day. Even the best strategy is worthless without proper execution. So I'm going to start at the end of the process, which you saw in the video. This is the bubbling stew of the process water treatment plant. So discharge that we once sent straight to the city is first treated on-site through a series of anaerobic and aerobic digesters. Essentially, bacteria feeds on the effluent to clean the water and produces a byproduct of methane. We capture the methane in what amounts to a giant balloon, then we pipe it back into the building where it fires a cogenerator. So that's an engine that can produce both heat and electricity, making it more efficient. The cogen allows us to offset those critical and very expensive peak loads by creating electricity on-site from a renewable source, our process wastewater. So right now we produce up to 12% of our electricity, but we store the methane so that we can run the engine during our coincident peak when the rates are highest. So we save on average of $5,000 a month on our bill. So it's 12% of our electricity, it's about 40% of our bill. So the cogen, I think, is a good example of turning what could have been seen as a regulatory obligation to either lessen our loads or pay the city a capital fee to treat them into an opportunity to reduce our electricity bill and the ability to demonstrate turning waste into fuel. Oh, I forgot that one. That was the picture of the cogen. On the theme of electricity, that which we do buy is 100% wind offset and has been since 1999 when we signed a long-term contract with the city of Fort Collins. And that contract allowed the city to finance an additional turbine on the Medicine Bow in Wyoming, which you see here. We were the first wind-powered brewery and the largest private consumer of wind power at the time we made the switch, which came about, as the video said, through a unanimous thumbs-up coworker vote. So this is a great story. It's a fabled example of ownership thinking in action. So people participated as owners, and then it cemented our identity as a company willing to invest in its beliefs. And for those of us who were there at the time, it was a real turning point in corporate identity. So we have continued to invest. So from very early days, when Jeff lashed a metal garbage can on top of his basement brew kettle to capture steam, we've always looked towards moving the needle forward when it comes to conserving energy. Reducing, which we consider doing more with less rather than doing without, should always be the first step in sustainability efforts. This is a picture of our Merlin brew kettle, which boils the wort in sheets to minimize evaporation in BTUs rather than in a great vat like most brew kettles do. On top of the kettle is a vapor condenser heat exchanger, which is like the one Jeff designed 18 years ago with parts from Ace Hardware. So the liquid in the kettle comes to a boil, steam is released, and then passed through a steel pipe that you can see. Inside the pipe is a coil filled with cool city water. As the steam passes over the coil, the water inside is heated to about 70 C and is then stored. So we conserve the heat energy and use it to preheat water in other stages of the brew. Our buildings employ many simple, sustainable choices. Daylighting throughout our offices and production areas allow for minimal lighting requirements. Motion sensors turn off lights and drop the temperature in the room when an area is at rest. Simple choices like these quickly pay for themselves. But then some less simple choices. In our new packaging hall, we wanted to do a better job than ever before to minimize the energy required to operate the building. So we designed the basic requirements of the hall and used software modeling to tell us how to size and select the systems. I think both Michael and Nick spoke about these. So it told us about daylighting, lighting, heating, cooling, and insulation. So the model compared the energy performance of alternative building systems, all designed integratively, against the baseline ASHRAE measurement. We were able to reduce combined lighting and HVAC energy use by 50% compared to the benchmark using this modeling. So this 55,000 square feet is conditioned by what is essentially a fancy swamp cooler. No compressors, no Freon. Evaporative cooling may not work everywhere, but it works great in Colorado. Through process improvements and efficiencies, some of which involve capital investments, but many which are just about being conscious, we've been able to reduce our water usage to 3.9 barrels of water for every barrel of beer. The industry average is about 5 or 6 to 1. And obviously, water stewardship should be a top-of-mind issue for every Colorado business. As an example of enlightened self-interest, it's good for the bottom line. It's necessary to preserve our way of life here in Colorado and our ability to do business and to protect the natural amenities of the West. This was in the video, our aesthetic reuse of materials. At New Belgium, the chairs in our tasting room are made from old or discarded bicycle rims. The trim and finishing woodwork in our new packaging hall is from beetle kill pine trees. And much of our office furniture is from recovered materials like FedEx tubes for the desk legs and keg caps melted down and turned into table surfaces. So in this way, we can make our brand, which is about sustainability, visible, and it also makes it a really nice place to come to work. We have an employee recycling center on site that allows coworkers to drop off materials that can't be picked up curbside, like old bicycle tubes or household e-waste. We've heard that recycling is the gateway drug to sustainability, so we're all about getting people hooked. We also have a brown glass recycling program that helps businesses in the surrounding area do a better job of recycling their glass. So we employ this friend of ours, Rob, who has a bicycle courier service, and he goes around to all the local bars and restaurants and picks up their brown glass, which is not picked up, which they would have to pay to get picked up, and many of them often don't. So we pick it up for free, and Rob hauls it back to New Belgium, and we put it in a big dumpster with our waste glass and ship it to Golden, where it's reincarnated as new Coors bottles. So I think that a business can only be as sustainable as the industry it's in. So for us, that means working in partnership with glass manufacturers and brewers and other beverage makers to keep glass out of the trash. In 2007, we created a cross-departmental committee to develop a sustainability management system. So it's coworkers from all disciplines across the brewery. We met for more than 12 months. We met once a month to create a document that will serve as the compass and the barometer for all our future sustainability projects. We set our targets around carbon footprinting and water stewardship and advocacy, and stated that we would do a regular sustainability report. And that's our first one in 2007 is on our website. And to kick off the process, and I think this is something everyone could do with their green team or a larger group, we talked about first what environmental problems are the planet facing, how does the brewing industry contribute to those problems, and then we asked what can we do to change the brewing industry. And that's how we came up with our action and advocacy strategy. In order to best leverage our actions, we had to get some data about our impacts. So we commissioned a life cycle analysis of the carbon footprint of a six-pack of fat tire. And you can find that whole report on our website also. We learned that from cradle to grave, less than 4% of the greenhouse gas emissions caused by a six-pack actually occurs at the brewery. The remaining 96% is split fairly evenly between upstream and downstream. So we saw the life cycle assessment as a tool to improve not just the sustainability of New Belgium, but of our industry also. So we're communicating up and down the value chain to help our business partners with their sustainability programs. You can kind of see that. So through the SMS process, the Sustainability Management System, we realized that we were lagging in not working with our vendors to ensure that environmental stewardship extended to our supply chain. So we created another interdisciplinary team that worked together to develop these sustainable purchasing guidelines. So we look at their environmental footprint, their culture, whether they have a management system that sets goals and does regular reporting, and finally, are they working with others in their industry? Because ultimately you have to. And we also created a list of questions that each purchaser can use to send to their vendors to find out about their environmental and social practices. So right now we're just collecting that information to figure out where we should go next. It's really informal. But in the process, we've found suppliers who are excited to partner with us to evolve their own practices, which positively affects our impact too. So for example, we asked a vendor in Taiwan if he could stop shipping our bike reflectors in individual little plastic bags. And the very next shipment had them packaged in bulk in brown paper. So just by having a simple conversation with our supplier, it created some positive change. In 2007, we produced our first organic beer, Mothership Wit. And we found out that sourcing organic hops in the U.S. is really challenging. So we knew that having them grown in our region would bolster supply, it would provide a source of revenue for farmers, and it would cut down on shipping to Colorado brewers. Colorado produces more beer than any other state in the country. So we collaborated with a grad student at CSU, Department of Ag, who's doing research to help farmers create an organic hop industry in Colorado. And this has actually gotten attention from the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and they're participating in funding research as well. This past fall, first time organic hops have been harvested in Colorado. So the point that I've been trying to make is that the interests of the company, its employees and other stakeholders, and the planet are complementary. That's what I'm hoping to show, and that we do best when our strategies acknowledge that. So likewise, I think the interests of public, private, and nonprofit enterprises can be aligned too. We've long collaborated in a very straightforward way by donating $1 of every barrel of beer we sell to nonprofits in the communities in which we sell our beers. Since that's totaling about $500,000 this year, we realized we needed to become more strategic about our philanthropy. So we're looking to create partnerships in 3 key areas. 1, water stewardship, 2, sensible transportation and bike advocacy, and 3, sustainable agriculture. We want to use those partnerships to raise awareness of who we are and what we stand for, as well as engaging with local people on the issues that are important to them, and then we're going to try to measure the impact of our contributions. And that's how, that's what we call strategic philanthropy. One of the most exciting partnerships we're engaged in right now is called the Fort Zed RDSI project, and I will explain what both of those acronyms are. So this list includes both the RDSI partners and those helping out with the larger Fort Zed goals. So Fort Zed stands for Fort Collins Net Zero Energy District. So that's a series of projects and initiatives created by both public and private partnerships which use smart grid and renewable energy technologies to achieve local power generation and energy demand management. So the idea is in the downtown Fort Collins area and a 50-mile radius beyond that eventually we'll use net zero energy for both electrical and thermal needs. So RDSI stands for Renewable and Distributed Systems Integration. This is an $11 million project that's received $6 million in funding from the Department of Energy. And we're going to aggregate 3.5 megawatts of distributed assets, including photovoltaic, combined heat and power, and demand response to demonstrate 20% peak load reduction on 2 feeders by 2011. So in this project, New Belgium's contributing about 1 megawatt of that total, both through generation, we're putting PV on site, we're putting another engine on site, as well as peak load shedding. And that's the smart grid technology, we'll all be tied in and know when we need to shut off engines, and they'll all be programmed into that. So that's fairly exciting. And the folks involved with this are tapped into the stimulus money and hoping to get more funding to move the project forward. I'm often asked by reporters anyway, how we get involved with so many partnerships, like funding the organic hop research at CSU, or we almost provided Solex a site. Solex are the guys who are turning algae into biodiesel. Or we let a startup called Oberon use our processed water treatment facility to prove that you can turn its sludge into fish food. And of course, the RDSI project. And honestly, in each one of these cases, the principals approached us. But in no case did we hold hands like this. So don't worry, that doesn't involve that. Our reputation for supporting innovation and entrepreneurship, and we're willing to listen, we answer the calls, and people know that we're more inclined to say yes rather than no, has given us so many opportunities to grow our capacities and support our beliefs and have fun. So that's certainly something everyone can do. I think that the triple bottom line approach requires you to look beyond strict ROIs to values that are hard to quantify or that might not be immediately apparent. I have no doubt that if we ran our business from a short-term return perspective, it would be worth a fraction of its current value. So switching gears a little bit, I've mentioned that to be a role model and to leverage our actions, we have to work outside the brewery. I was recently asked by an interviewer how I would define a competitively sustainable company for the 21st century. And my first answer to that is one that collaborates. And just think about it, and I think that I stole this analysis from Wendell Berry. But how can competition be sustainable if its goal is ultimately to reduce the competitors to one, thus destroying itself? So destroying yourself, that's not sustainable. So by corollary, competition not sustainable. Anyway, competitive sustainability through collaboration leads me to the idea of trying to build a relationship between our brand advertising and our sustainable advocacy. In other words, we're using our branding to sell sustainability while also trying to sell some beer, of course. Since it's an amalgamation of advertising and advocacy, we call it advocacy. And here are some examples. We use print ads, which are hand-built from recycled materials, to showcase folks who are working each in their own way to protect the planet, while we're showcasing our beer. So, people, planets, profits, all served. I could not conclude this talk on sustainability without mentioning the bike. You've hopefully noticed that bikes are key players in our sustainable branding, and it's not just because of Fat Tire Ember Ale, and it's not just because bikes are so central to our company culture, but also because we believe that the bike is truly one of mankind's most sustainable inventions. And it's why we created the festival called Tour de Fat. Across the western U.S., we've performed 70 Tour de Fats over the last 7 years, raising more than $500,000 for bike-related activism. And more importantly, we hope we've returned and turned a lot of people to the simple, easy, active joy of riding a bike. Tour de Fat is a coup de grace of promoting health, a healthy planet, and brand loyalty. Yep. It also goes to show a sentiment that as a brewery we must endorse. If it's not fun, it's probably not going to be sustainable. So maybe that's actually a quadruple bottom line. Of course, it's one thing to watch a PowerPoint presentation on corporate sustainability and another thing entirely to make it real. And perhaps and probably I've erred on the side of making it seem too easy. But in the end, we have our home planet and we have each other. So why wouldn't we strive to create business structures that honor both? I think we may have time for questions, which I'd be happy to take, or just to hear people's thoughts since no one from the audience has really gotten to speak up today. And thanks very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Can you just say a little bit more about your theory about the use of competition to one is unsustainable?
I don't have the picture drawn. I can't draw you a map of it, but there's something about that we've succeeded more through collaboration and through open. We've always embraced transparency. We were the first beverage company to publish our life cycle assessment on our web, just generally publish it. We got calls from Coca-Cola. We got calls from Anheuser-Busch. I mean, this is the old model of if I have data, then I better protect it because someone could use it against me. We've just dropped that by the wayside and said, this is who we are. Let's put it all out there.
You mentioned that for every barrel of beer you sell, $1 goes to some sort of social responsibility funding type enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned sustainable agriculture. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that aspect of it.
I can't tell you specifically what nonprofits we've funded, but we have every nonprofit that we funded in 2008 on our website, so you could go and look and see who they are and what their links are. By sustainable agriculture, it's anything from kind of the more conventional and organic ag to local, urban food production, trying to minimize nutrient flow into water streams. I think it's extremely important. I'm not sure if that answers your question, or.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk some more about Fort Zed?
Sure. So the concept of Fort Zed came through a community process called University Connections, where the city of Fort Collins and CSU realized that two great resources, very in close proximity to each other, not really working together to create the future of downtown Fort Collins as they could. And so a couple years ago, initiatives were developed around that. Energy, homelessness, healthcare, transit, the spectrum of things that a community would be looking at. And the concept of Fort Zed came through that brainstorming, community involvement process. And so in northern Colorado, we were so fortunate to have so many technology and consultant people working on the issue of smart grid. And that's where we really see the future of it. So it's renewables. It's how do you firm those resources through smart grid technologies, and we want to put the brain trust and the assets that we have, like progressive companies like ourselves, to work to say that this could happen, that we can have distributed generation and reduce the need for more large, out in the countryside, coal-fired power plants. So the DOE project is a jump start to that at just 3.5 megawatts.
You've got a lot of work to do to achieve the goals of the Fort Zed project, I realize, but what's next?
For the brewery?
Have you thought about that?
I have thought about that, yes. And I'm focused on the Fort Zed project over the next 2 years, but I think it's certainly going to be in the supply chain and figuring out some things about packaging, some things about distribution. We're actually looking at is regional production the right thing for the brewery going forward to reduce transit miles, so both to reduce transportation as well as to be in our communities. I mean, so much of our identity is about northern Colorado and the people who live and work there. And would it be more authentic to bring that to the southeast or to the northwest and not to be the Fort Collins Brewery in those places, but to be a brewery that has employee ownership and deep involvement and supply chain partnerships in those places, in those areas. Good. Yeah.
What kind of incentives do you offer your employees to actually embrace these ideas that you have, like driving that forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, we make sure we hire for culture. I mean, that's kind of the first step is we have an amazing candidate pool, and we screen for people who are really who want to be with us because of the values that we have. So in many cases, we don't have to incent. They are coming in, adding fuel to the fire. And then we do conventional things like measuring how many people come to bike to work day. But I wouldn't say that we have no specific programs where you get a prize if you do X. And that's even before I was in the sustainability position for a long time. We never had that for safety. We never had that for bonuses. All of our bonuses are the same, top to bottom in the breweries, but per rata on compensation, because it's a team effort, and we don't have sales. We don't have sales commissions. You know, it's a team effort. It takes all of us. We don't believe in singling out individuals in a way that would perhaps put competition within the system in a way that would be non-productive. Thanks.